الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب النار. الحمد لله.
So thank you for our prayer, Abdul. So a little background on our session for today. So ang MVP tutorial session is an initiative of MVP to further develop our volunteer skills in teaching, and it goes hand in hand with our MVP mentorship sessions. We would start hopefully this week. So ang aim talaga ng MVP kung bakit merong ganito is para matutukan natin yung mga students natin, most especially yung mga low performing students natin. So today, Mr. Edwin Piedad would share more about tutorial sessions kung paano mag-handle ng mga bata in a one-on-one tutorial, no? So, Sir Edwin, pwede ka ba magpakilala sa sarili mo for our volunteers? So, kilala naman kita. So, sa mga volunteers na naman.
Hello, good morning to everyone.
Morning.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Sige. Yeah, I am Edwin Piedad Jr. and I am currently teaching in Ateneo de Davao University Junior High School. So I am handling a Christian life education subject. Okay, so yeah, and I'm happy to be here with you to share some practical tips on how to handle one-on-one tutorials. Okay, so yeah, shall we start now?
Apa, sure.
Let me share my screen first. May I know if you can see my screen now?
Oo, makita.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Nakikita po.
Thank you for the feedback. So once again, our topic for today is on, I made a title on this, so dynamics of tutorial, the Saint Iggy way. So of course, yeah, we are in Ateneo and everything should be anchored on, of course, first is on the proceedings of the Jesuits. And of course, we cannot, when we talk about Jesuits, we can do away with following the footsteps of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. All right, sige. So again, I would like to introduce to you the flow of our webinar this morning. So I divided it into 5, and this is actually coming from, these parts are coming from the Jesuits' tradition of teaching and learning. So the famous Ignatian pedagogical paradigm. So I know that some of you here know this by heart already. So context, experience, reflection, action, and evaluation. Sige. So the objectives are as follows. So to know the basic dynamics and guidelines of tutorials. And second, develop professionalism in handling students during one-on-one tutorial. Okay, sige. So before we get too serious on this topic, well, actually, this is not, we don't be stiff enough as if parang we are not allowed to move. Let's just be, let's try to be at home. So I wouldn't mind if you also bring coffee with you. So okay lang. I also have coffee here. So you can just drink it if you want. So that's fine with me. Okay. Sige. So in the chat box, I want you to please, let me, yeah. So in the chat box, please let me know about your age, your college degree, and third is where were you 2 or 3 years ago? So are you a student or are you already working? So can you share that in our chat box? So again, okay,
Age, college.
just continue typing. Okay, I can see 29 years old, 23, 26, 5 the I. So AB philosophy. Sige, how about the others? Please just continue typing. Sige. Yeah, I've seen your ages, but the okay. So BS Ed English working. Okay, thank you. Agricultural education. So si Nasser, si Leo, Bachelor of Science in Community Development, Master in Participatory Development, freelance researcher. Okay, sige, just continue typing. Okay, may kasama tayo dito na Pol Sci graduate. Others are education, so in English, or Armia. All right. Sige, so thank you for sharing your a little info or background of yourself. So that helps me, that gives me a context of who are the people here. All right, sige, so thank you once again. Next question or next simple activity for you. Can you please complete this statement? You joined the MVP because, so
Pardon, sir, pardon.
okay, sige. So you joined the MVP because, so please state your reason for joining this noble work. By the way, can you still see my shared screen?
Oo, makita pa siya. So ako
Okay.
mauna. Kasi part naman din ako ng program.
Sige, go ahead, Josh.
So I joined the MVP because I was assigned by my rector. So out of obedience, not out of will, but later on, I learned to embrace the volunteer service, and as of now, I'm still continuing to serve MVP as a staff. So ayun, yan ang story. I joined MVP because of that.
Okay, thank you,
Sir,
Josh. Yes,
ako naman.
who,
Ah, nag
who is
Leo.
talking? Leo, sige.
Leo po.
Sige, go ahead.
Nag-join ako sa MVP kasi gusto kong magturo sa mga bata paano magsulat at magbasa.
Wow. Thank you, Leo. Sige, there's also one here from in the chat box. So it's from Norsida. So by the way, pardon me please if I cannot pronounce your name correctly. So by the way, you can correct me. Sige. So I joined MVP because I wanted to help our madrasa and also learned more about being a teacher. Wow, thank you. Sige, who else wants to share? It could be in the chat box or through speaking. Yes, is our Mia raising her hand?
Okay.
So, go ahead, please.
Hello po everyone and especially Sir Edwin Pedad. I joined the MVP kasi po, nung una akala ko, parang voluntary teaching lang siya na walang sweldo at walang allowance. Pero meron pala siyang allowance nung diniscuss na sa akin. Nung nabanggit nung administrator namin na merong ang madaris na kailangan. Pero dito rin magtuturo sa school. Sabi ko, willing ako sir. Kung kahit walang allowance, okay lang sa akin. Pero alhamdulillah kasi meron din pala. So, nagustuhan ko siya kasi para din akong nagtuturo na yung parang nandito lang din ako sa school na kung saan nagtuturo ako. Thank you, sir.
Okay, wow, that's nice. Thank you, Mia. Yeah. Does anyone wants to share? Sige, go ahead, Mr. Yusef ba?
Sir,
Yes, go ahead, please share.
good morning to everyone, sir. I want to join the MVP because first I want to have an experience because I don't have experience to teach. That is first, and second, I want to develop the generation young. I want to educate the children because that is the most important. And number three, I want to join the MVP because I want to teach the student the peace and development. Thank you, sir.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, you want to teach the young generation. Okay, anyone else who would like to share? Yes,
Sir,
yes, go ahead, Mr. Nasser. Tama ba? Sige, go ahead, please.
nasa tama mo. Next, again, assalamualaikum. And good morning to each and everyone, especially to you, Sir Edwin Edmar, and also Sir Joshua, pati si Sir Benzi. Magandang umaga po sa inyo, Sir. Alhamdulillah, you're safe po sa pag-uwi nyo. And nice meeting you po talaga. So, sa meet po kayo in personal. And then, I'm so happy kasi nag-enjoy po nung that time na nagkikita tayo. The reason why I'm joining the MVP, although I was worked before, 4 years work na naging volunteer teacher din ako in a public school. The reason kung bakit ako na nag-join sa MVP kasi gusto kong malaman. Hello, sir. Sorry, sir. Hello, sir. Sorry, nawala ako sa signal.
Okay, sige, sir. You're clearer now. Sige, go ahead po, sir.
The reason kung bakit po ako nag-join ng MPP because of something po sa buhay ko. Although I worked before na naka-4 years sa public school, gusto nalaman kung anong status ng mga madaris and private school kasi hindi medyo curious ako kung ano ba yung meron sa kanila. Although nakikita natin na nag-aaral sila, but then how they are balancing their education sa madaris kay sa public school. That's why na nandoon po ako. And also, I always treated to my kwan talaga, yung hugot line ko sa buhay para kanino ako bumabangon. Parang Nescafe lang po, sir, sa commercial.
Oh.
The reason kung bakit po ako, bakit ko yung sarili ko to join the MVP kasi gusto kong makatulong talaga in my Kobang sa Moroyang students, young learners, especially kasi dito sa amin kasi sir, dito sa na-assignan ko din na school. Although lugar ko po siya, pero may mga lugar na medyo risky pupuntahan like bundok po at saka remote area na hindi ko po napuntahan before. Now, nung nandito po ako sa MVP, nakita ko kung ano yung situation doon, especially the community, kung anong meron sa kanila. That's why yun yung naging strength ko talaga, i-push ko yung sarili ko kung talaga yung maganda itong ginawa, maganda yung reason kung bakit ako nandito. Kasi not only to help the young learners sa Morowe, to help the community din, to society po. Kasi although nasa MVP po ako, I was affiliated in my organization din, kaya tinitingnan ko kung ano yung status, kung ano yung dapat nating itulong sa community, especially the mga bata na nangangailangan ng tulong. So maganda po yung tandem para sa akin ng MVP sa organization ko kasi nakikita ko yung status ng community, nakikita ko yung status ng bata na dapat silang tulungan. And masaya po especially po ako kasi marami po akong natutunan regarding kung ano ba yung mga dapat natin gawin in a way of modular learning. Kasi sa amin po, we're not using internet or we're not using any forms of mode of learning kasi module po kami ngayon. So yun po, nalaman ko kung ano yung proper way, kung paano natin gagamitin, kung paano natin isa-set yung modules natin into standard in our society, in our community. Kasi mahirap po kasi ang module pag downloaded po tayo kasi pag downloaded masyadong malaki ang standard ng mga bata. So hindi makaya ng bata yung standard ng national level na module. So that's why po nung nagkaroon po tayo ng mga trainings, nagpapasalamat po talaga ako kasi marami akong natutunan regarding kung paano tayo mag-unpack ng modules. Nagagamit po namin ngayon. So yun po sir, maraming salamat. Medyo
Wow.
mahaba.
That's fine. Thank you, sir. Sige. Yeah. We can entertain one more sharer. Meron pa ba? There's one here from the chat box. So I joined MVP because I want to help inspire and motivate the students through education. All right. Sige, kung wala na. So once again, hearing from you. Meron pa ito from CT. My principal chose me and I believe it is obligatory to follow the decisions of our administrators, which is in the first place for our development naman as a teacher and as a Bangsamoro people. All right. Sige, once again. So hearing from you, one word that is repeated is help. Diba? You want to help educate the young. You want to help your community. So again, once again, as early as now, I wish to thank you and congratulate you for being part of this noble work. Okay, so again, thank you for sharing that to me. So you joined the MVP because of because of several reasons, but the most important thing is that you want to help. Okay, sige, so again, it shall be divided into 5. Now, before we start with the first part, the topic is I wish to tell you now what I usually say to my students. Okay, sige. Now, during the presentation of the topic, I would love if you raise questions about matters that you want to be clarified about. Okay, so please do not wait for the end of the presentation before you raise these questions, because the usual tendency is we forget what questions do we have in mind. So it would be fine with me if in the middle of my talk you would raise your hand, or you would talk, or you would call my attention because you have a question. Okay, is that clear? Again, please.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So do not wait for the end of the presentation to start and asking questions. Okay. Now, as regards asking questions, there are 3 possible answers coming from me. First is that, yeah, I would answer your question directly. Second possible answer that's coming from me is you just wait because your question will be answered later in the presentation. So that's also possible answer. And the third possible answer is I do not know. So if you have a question, maybe I also do not know that because I also consider myself as a co-learner. And so just like you, I might also be pondering on those questions. Okay? Sige. So that's it. Please ask questions along the way if you want to be clarified. So let's go to the first part, context. So context here, it's defined as to adapt to the condition of the one who is to engage. So again, in the context, it's important for us to know the context of our learners. Okay, so again, to adapt to the condition of the one who is to engage. Now, if you have noticed at the very start of this talk, I asked you about your age and your educational background, and of course, the reason why you joined the MVP. So that's an example of knowing the context of who are you going to engage yourself with. Okay, so again, first and foremost, know the context. So who is your audience? Who are your learners? Okay. So we educators meet the students where they are in order to guide them into the course material. So again, we meet the students where they are. This is not just yes, we take this literally and of course figuratively. Why? Because we do not just meet them in the meeting place, the usual kung saan kayo, where do you held or hold classes, but meeting them where they are also means we meet their emotional status, we meet their ano ba, spiritual, we meet, in other words, everything about our students or our learner. So again, context. We should always know the context. So this is very important in the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm. And also, this is significant in our task as tutors or as educators. Okay, so I hope everything is clear so far. Now, I wish to share with you now some tips in knowing the context of our learners. So, diba? In knowing the context, it's important to ask these questions. How do I prepare to teach this material most effectively? So, take note of the words here. How do I prepare to teach this material? Not just yung parang basta makaturo lang, but most effectively to this particular student at this particular time, place, now given their particular needs, interests, skills, and reality. So if we want to know the context of our learner, so we should be able to answer these questions. How to teach them at their particular time and place, given their particular needs, what are the needs of the students, their interests, skills, and reality. Okay, so again, in knowing the context, we must ask ourselves with this question. Next, so what are the things that we need to know about our tutees? First is their name. Now, preferably their nicknames. Okay, so if they want, you can ask them their nicknames. So, and you call them by their nicknames. So, di ba? Learners want to be called by their names. And this makes the tutorial session more personal. So, we don't just call them you or ikaw. Sige, sagutin mo ito. But more importantly, call them by their name. Diba? It makes it, di ba? Kung ikaw, it's better to talk to a person who knows you personally. So again, so one important tip is that we should know the name, preferably the nickname of our learners. Okay. Next, second point here is, or second item here is the family background. So please know the family background of your learners. So that this is very important. Why? So, di ba? You may ask this question. What is the family's source of income? What do they do? How many are they in the family? Things like those need to be known by the teacher. Okay, so knowing the background helps us educators prepare for our lessons well. Diba? If we know the status of the family, the economic status, so we know the environment of our learner. For example, diba? In the middle of the discussion, if we want to give more examples, diba? Of course, we will not use examples such as iPad or Galaxy Note if our students are coming from family whose, diba, engagement is more on farming, is more on agricultural. So of course, again, we have to meet them where they are. So if we know that the family is into farming, so in the discussion in your tutorial session, please use examples that are related to this, because, diba, it would make things easier to understand. Okay, so that's the importance of knowing the family background. Okay, are we clear so far?
Yes, sir. Clear po.
Okay, thank you, Leo, for the feedback. So again, know the family background. Another important or advantage in knowing the family background is that, diba, as I said earlier, know how many are they in the family. So it gives us educators, excuse me, more time to be patient with our students, diba? If you have known that they are five, so lima silang students in the family, so you would give due consideration in the submission of outputs. For example, lima sila na nagsishare ng the same table, the same school materials. So, diba? If you know this reality in your learner, so you'll become more patient in demanding for or requesting them to submit their outputs. So, diba? Kung lima sila and sharing one table, sharing one set of school materials, so, diba, it would take time for a learner to finish. Kung, diba, kung lima kayong nagti-take turn in using the materials available. Okay? So, yeah, that's the importance of knowing the excuse me, the family background. Next is personal interests of the learner. Okay, this is also important. So, this would help us how to deliver the lesson in the most appealing and interesting way. So we have to know the interest of the learner. Okay. Di ba? Yung kunin natin yung kiliti nila. Mas interested pala siya sa topic na ito. So I'll use this more often in using examples in my teaching. Okay, so again, these three things. Now, in addition to personal interests of the learner, di ba? If it would also help us during the intervention. For example, kung ang learner is hirap magsalita ng Filipino, so why? Well, you ask yourself, bakit kaya? So you explore more about the learner. Kaya pala because the learner is more fond of, for example, watching English movies if there are available materials. So in knowing this, diba, we can help our students well. So, diba, if nahihirapan magsalita ng Filipino, so maybe you can suggest that in their spare time, kung vacant sila, they watch Filipino movies so that they can be more fluent with the language. Okay, so again, if you have questions, please, you can use our chat box. Okay, so again, name, family background, and the personal interest of the learner. Another important thing to consider in the context. So, where do you do the tutorial session? Again, where do you do the tutorial session? So this is also very important question to ask ourselves with. Why? Because the place of tutorial is very important. Now, diba? In the usual tutorial setting, the parents or guardians are the ones who request for a tutorial session for their children. Hence, they are aware of their responsibilities also, diba? In the usual tutorial, diba, may mga parents na mag-request that would invite a tutor for their student. But your context is different because, diba, as I have learned from you, you took the initiative to do the tutorial sessions, right? And so that would mean that diba, yung can you imagine that when you invited the parents, sige, ma'am, sir, we will do the tutorial sessions here. Gawin namin ito. Of course, it's it's like para bang it's us who took the initiative and the parents would say, sige, pwede yan. But then, di ba, we do not know that deep inside, they are somehow, some of them are not that comfortable to have a teacher inside their homes. Di ba? Again, this is a unique setup for all of us here, for all of you here. Okay? So the teachers, learners, and even the parents don't have a choice but to embrace the situation. Given this pandemic, so we have to do some adjustments. And part of the adjustments is that we have to do the learning at home. Okay, so again, where do you do the tutorial session? sa looban ng bahay, tama ba? Or sa labas or anywhere else. Now, one of the most affected here, yes, we teachers are affected by this, but take note that the learners are also affected. So for example, one of my students shared to me, sabi niya, kasi, di ba, the setup here dito sa Ateneo is we do online learning. So, they learn, they listen to the teacher while their parents or their siblings are around. So, di ba, they are listening to classes, nasa tabi nila yung parents nila or malapit lang sa kanila. And just like you, I know that there are people around you there who is also listening to you. Well, they are not really listening, but they can hear you whenever you talk. Tama ba? So, now, in the context of our learners, diba, as you do the tutorial session, diba, the people around can also hear you. So, the people around our learners hear them whenever they talk. And so this one student of mine said that he doesn't want to share, he doesn't want to speak because he is ashamed of his parents and siblings. So, di ba? And that is why the place of the tutorial is very important. So, you ask the, di ba? That's part of knowing the context. You ask the learner, are you comfortable with this setup? Na okay lang ba na malapit ang parents mo? Or do you want a little space for just the two of us? Okay, so, di ba, as you do the session, please consider that. Kasi nga, may mga learners na mas komportable if they are not heard by their parents or siblings. Okay, so please take note of that, ha? Again, please remember the place of where the session is taking place. So, of course, make sure that it would benefit the learner. Okay, so again and again, meet them where they are. So that's very important. We have to meet our learners where they are physically, emotionally, and of course, intellectually. Sige, so are you still with me? Do I still make sense?
Yes, sir. Please continue.
Yes, sir. Continue.
Okay, very good. Sige, let's have this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for your feedbacks. Yeah, let's have this, this simple activity. You can use the chat box. So I want you to describe the context of your duties. Second, what are the challenges so far? And third, how are you coping with it? So these are the guide questions for you to answer. Sige, so let me know the context of your learners there in your place. Again, please use the chat box.
Excuse, sir, yung first question po. Ulit.
Describe the context of your learners or duties. So, and describing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome po. And what are the challenges so far? So that's the second question. And how are you coping with it? How are you adjusting with it? Okay, maybe 5 minutes will be enough. So yeah, just continue typing your answers. Okay, last 2 minutes to put your answers in our chat box. All right. Sige, for the others who are still typing, please just continue. Now, while you are doing that, let me read some of your answers here. First is from Leo. So, my tutees are financially incapable to pay the learning module. Ang na-retrieve na module ay walang follow-up from teachers to the learners. Kaya tutorial, magandang paraan. At the end of the day, kailangan ng bata na matuto regardless of the grade niya. Okay? Sige. This is very good, di ba? Because of the incapacity to pay the learning module. So, tutorial is an alternative, which is very good. Okay, thank you, Leo. From City. As of now, wala pa akong tutees. However, I already tapped whom I will going to tutor next week, inshallah. Wow. Sige. So, okay. Next, sometimes my learners are demanding on what they want. Challenges are hard to explain the topic this pandemic. And I copy this to do more adjustment for the I cope with this to do more adjustment for the learners. Next, from Baid and from yeah. Next is willing and excited to learn and see their teacher. So that's from Armia. The challenge is that network connection and finance. So the financial matter is also a challenge. So we recommend to use blended learning. Okay. Next is from Marmanur. Commonly in our school, if there are duties, it is usually in the problem of reading, especially for the grades 2, 3, and 4. It is hard to help them since we are in a virtual learning of education. Okay, so from Abdul, hindi pa ako naka-tutor ngayon pero naka-start na ako magturo gamit ang module. Nag-visit kami sa bahay ng mga students ko. Financial problem kasi hindi minsan nakakakuha ng modules ang mga students kasi walang pambayad. Private kasi school. Binibigyan pa rin sila ng module pero kailangan bayaran next na magkuha ng modules. Okay. Sige. Next. In my community, that's from from Abdul. Next is from Nasser. In my community where I located, the learners are far to each other. Most of them belongs to the poor of the poorest or less for one. And I address to them the best approach that will be applicable to them. The challenge are most of them are facing the hardest handle in their modular. But then I use an strategies that Sir mentioned every week. We will gathering to them to know where they understand well. So third, time management. We are a teacher. We must to know the smart one. If one are not or does not attend the tutorial session, I volunteer to visit their home even it's far to make sure the learners learn about our materials. Okay, may continuation dito from Marmanur. I will try my best to guide them even in this pandemic situation with time management. Okay, sige. So, once again, thank you for your answers, diba? So, it is you who are there. So, no one can know the context but you yourselves as educators. So again, we know the importance of knowing the context of our learners. And so, please give time to explore it. Okay, so what I shared with you earlier are just some practical tips. And if there are tips that are better than what I shared with you, please do them also. Okay? Are we good so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sige. Before we proceed with our next main topic, I'd like to give everyone a 5-minute break. So if you want to do some stretching, you want to go to the comfort room, so we call this as health break or brain break. So, rest muna in 5 minutes, okay? And let's
Okay.
resume in a
Okay,
short.
sir.
Okay, sige. All right, sige. So, hello, are you still there? Or baka ako na lang
Yes,
dito.
sir.
Okay.
Dito
Yes,
pa
yes.
ako.
Okay, thank you. Sige. So, I hope you had a break. I hope nakatulong ang break natin. Sige. Before we continue, I'd like to read other answers here in the chat box. Okay. So, from Raida, tama bang pagka-pronounce? Sige. Hard time to adjust with the new normal classes. So yeah, it's very it's really difficult to adjust, and we also felt that during the start of our class here. So, but we have to adapt to this new way of learning and teaching and learning. Sige. Next, the challenges are handling the grades 6 to 10 science learners through online and module. So I'm still in a progress of adjustment, pero alhamdulillah, nagiging okay naman din po for this second quarter. Wow, very good. Next, the learning attainment of a passive and active learners. Yeah, this is true. Meron talagang active na parang very eager to learn, but meron ding parang wala lang. It's like, hello, am I talking to someone? So yeah, these are part of our challenges. Okay, so di ba? Yung mga passive. The challenge is, di ba? After knowing their context, how do we make them as active learners? So that's yan ang one of our challenges. Yeah. From Annalyn, salam and good morning. Kakapasok lang po sa Zoom, mahina. Okay, sige, okay lang yan. We are done with the first topic, and meron pang several points that I would like to share. And don't worry, because I'll also give my notes on this to Sir Joshua Michael, so he can share it with you. Okay, so yeah, di ba? If mahina ang signal, we don't have control over it. So we just have to bear with it lang. That's okay, that's okay. Okay, another answer here. The learning attainment of a passive and active. Yeah, it's a continuation pala kanina. Providing an activity that suit to the types of learners. So to engage learners' experience with someone so that they can show their creativity and uniqueness. Okay, so di ba? That's something this is very good to know, di ba? Again, it addresses the challenge to, what's the challenge again in the context? To meet them where they are. Okay, we meet our students where they are, and this is what you have just shared here are, well, they have traces of this challenge. Diba? You did some adjustments, you find ways for them to get more engaged in the learning. So these are very good actions in order to meet our students where they are. Okay. Sige, so other practical tips I can give to you in the context. Diba? So after learning about the context of the learner, diba? We learned about the context. It is also good to explore the context of the teacher. Okay, diba? Earlier, we have been talking about the context of the learner, but it is also good to know the context of the teacher or of ourselves. So it answers the questions. How prepared are we in having the tutorial session? Again, how prepared are we? So again, other practical tips. So what shall the teacher do at the very start of the tutorial session? First is, this is very important, establish guidelines to your students. Okay? Diba? For those who are doing this in their homes, so sa mga bahay ng mga bata, so please tell the students that they should have taken a bath before the teacher arrives. So Di ba? What is, this may sound funny. Wait, nawala yung share ko. Okay, so again, this may sound funny, but then this is very important. Why? Because, of course, if the the physical condition of our learners is very important. Kung hindi pa naliligo, baka sleepy pa yung disposition nila. Okay, so di ba? Again, establish guidelines such as this. Next is submission of tasks also. So that's one of the guidelines that you should set. Where or when are they going to submit the tasks? So they should not be late, but as much as possible, we teachers should be flexible enough. Diba? As I shared kanina, when we know the context na, lima pala silang magkakapatid that are also learning. So, diba? In knowing this, we can adjust our deadlines. So that's part of the guidelines. And make sure or please provide the students with a copy of your guidelines so that they will have time to review it and time to, of course, to learn more about your ways of proceedings. All right? Sige. So second, prepare a learning plan for each session. Diba? This is very important para our lesson, our tutorial session will have a direction. So, hindi yung, punta ako doon. Kung ano lang gusto kong ituro. So, it should not be that way. Okay? So, please prepare a learning plan for each session. Sige. So, now, how will we prepare for the learning plan? So, this brings us to our succeeding topics for this morning. So, we know the context already. So, the next part here is, diba, after the context is experience. So, we already know the background of the students, and we also know how prepared are we as teachers. Now, the next challenge is, how do we share this, or how do we make this, or how do we do our plans in the actual session itself? Okay, so that's part of the content of this experience. So, by definition, experience for Ignatius meant to taste something internally. Diba? We want to taste something. We want to experience something internally. So, ang experience from the outside should have an internal impact on the learners. Okay, can we still follow? So, this is,
Yes, sir.
okay, very good. So this might be not that clear as of the moment, but of course, I hope you will be clarified with this as we continue. So it includes the use of the senses, imagination and feelings along with the mind and intellect. Okay, so for the experience, now we have this question that we must ask ourselves with: how do I engage my students' affective senses to increase learning? Okay, so diba, what's affective? Yung sa emotion. How do we engage them? Diba? Because these emotions that our students feel will affect or increase their interest in learning. So next is, what experiences do I provide that help my students connect to my subject material. Okay, so again, we must ask this question so that the experience or the learning experience becomes more interesting, and it becomes more uh, meaningful to the students. Sige, so let's continue. So for the parts of the experience, so it may be divided into three. So as you teach your students, you may also follow this. First is motivation. Second, development of the lesson. And then third is synthesis. Okay, let's take these three or discuss these three one by one. So I have here an example of a motivational activity. So I hope you can read what's on the shared screen. So for example, if the subject is social studies and the topic is colonialism and imperialism. So how do we motivate the students? Again, uh, we should do at the start an activity that would uh, tickle or tickle their interest. So para bang let's start with perhaps one of the good ways is to start it with their own experience. So again, the topic is colonialism and imperialism. So yung mga pananakop. This is for social studies. Okay. So maybe let's ask the students first with this question. Have you ever felt controlled by other people? Second, list down your personal experiences of being controlled, overpowered by anyone. So it may be your parents, teachers, school, friends, family, and how did you cope with this? So, di ba? This is an example of a motivational activity. Di ba? Again, our topic is about imperialism and colonialism. Yung pananakop. And let's start with the feelings or the experience of the learner. So in this way, diba, it is easier for us to segue to the main topic because, of course, colonialism and imperialism are all about controlling other people. So countries who do what they want in order to conquer other countries. So, diba? If we go back to the definition, or the question, how do I engage my students affective? So yung feelings nila to increase learning. And this is an example of it. Diba? In asking these questions, we increase the affective part of our learners. Okay, can we still follow?
Yes, sir.
Or sige. So, or do you have questions or which part needs more clarification? Okay, please, if you have clarification, please type it in our chat box. Okay. Again, we are talking here about the actual experience in the tutorial session. So always start with an activity that motivates our students. Okay? Sige. 'Di ba? We attack them in their affective, so yung feelings nila. Another example that I can give is, 'di ba? As I said, I teach Christian life education, and one time our topic was about temptation. So what I did as part of the motivational activity is inside the classroom. So sa loob ng classroom, nagdala ako ng chocolate. And I literally ate the chocolate in front of them. So can you imagine yung mga students ko, they were watching me and, di ba, kumakain ng chocolate in front of them. So with that activities, I heard my students, sir, pahingi naman yan, sir, bigyan mo kami. But that's actually just part of the motivational activity because I gave them an actual experience of being tempted. Kasi nga, the topic is about temptation. So, and then from that, sige, di ba? What did you feel as I was eating the chocolate here? Sir, I want to eat it also. So mga ganyan. So again, these are part of motivational activities that will hopefully lead us to our lessons. Okay, so again, in the tutorial session, please do start with an activity that motivates our learners. Kasi if the usual tendency is if we jump into the actual lesson itself, so para bang masyak ang bata. Okay, so please do an activity that is related to the actual topic. And this is one example, colonialism and imperialism. Okay, so yeah, always start with an activity. Next, development of the lesson. So ito na, after the activity, and you attack right away with the lesson. Sige, so for example, when we talk about colonialism, and when the learner says that I felt bad about it because I felt that I was controlled by my classmate. So para bang wala na akong freedom to choose what I want because I was controlled by my classmate. So, diba, if the student answers it that way, you can pick that up. Okay? Sige, diba? You felt sad because of that. And, diba? Can you imagine these countries? So, diba? Nakasegue ka na to the particular topic. Do you think that they also felt the same when they were colonized by these people? So, diba? The discussion now becomes more engaging because at the very start, you let the student share his or her feelings. So para bang, it's like parang conversation na. When we start with an activity that motivates the students or the learners, diba? The topic becomes more engaging, and we do not just do the tutorial session as if we are the one who are talking. All right? Sige. So again, if na-start na ng motivational activity, if it's good to start with the lesson, do it right away. And please find ways to segue to connect with with the actual topic. Okay? Sige, so how are you there? Is everything fine with you? Do I still make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the
More
feedback.
learning.
Sige. So, yun. So again, motivational activity. And if na-motivate na ang learner, start right away with the topic. Okay? Sige. Next is the synthesis. So, diba, after having the lesson, it's good to synthesize. Now, in synthesizing, we ask the students or the learners to synthesize the activity or the lesson not in a way that they will just repeat what the teacher said. Okay, di ba? Hindi yung parang parot lang ang mga students na i-repeat lang yung sinabi mo or sinabi ng teacher. So, in synthesizing, the teacher must create an activity for the learner to perform. So, this activity, as I said, should not be a mere repetition of what has been said by the teacher. So, hindi pa yung, as I said, hindi yung parang parot lang ang ating learner na repeat lang ang sinabi natin. So, take note of this. So, from the gathered learnings, the learner should be able to create a new concept. Okay? And the new concept must synthesize the topic. So, for example, how do you, di ba, the topic that I said earlier was colonialism and imperialism. So, di ba, to synthesize, you ask this question, is imperialism good or bad? Di ba? Yung parang they know what are the facts about it and they synthesize it in a way that they create a new, they call this, a new concept. Diba? The concept of, diba? For example, this one, being good or bad. So, diba? In answering this as part of their synthesis, imperialism is good because blah, blah, blah. They lay down their answers and the answers actually are coming from the facts that the teacher has shared. Or even if they say that imperialism is bad because of these particular reasons, so you see, they created a new concept of imperialism as good or bad, and they laid down the reasons, and the reasons are of course coming from the lesson of the teacher. All right. Sige. So again, motivation start with in the tutorial session, start with a motivational activity. Second, if it's if you feel that the learner is now motivated, then start with the lesson right away. And always end with a synthesis. So synthesize the learnings of the or the topics discussed. Okay, so for your short activity, I want you to choose a particular subject area. So English, math, science, so it's up to you. And choose a particular topic. And I want you to think of or create a simple motivational activity that engages the students affective, yung feelings ng bata, ng learner. Sige daw. So, again, if you have a previous experience of this, please share that here. Or if not, I want you to think based on what I shared with you. So, choose a particular subject, what particular topic, and of course, create a simple lang, motivational activity that engages the students' affective senses. Sige, please utilize the chat box for this activity. So again, I'll give you 5 minutes for this. So, yung very simple lang. For example, yung sinabi ko kanina, the topic is about temptation. So my motivational activity is to tempt the students. And what I did was to eat chocolate in front of them. So that's an example of a motivational activity. Sige daw. So again, please use our chat box. So 5 minutes for this simple activity. Okay, sige. So there are answers here now. Okay, so mathematics 1, subtraction, English, grade 3. So there's from Ma'am Armia. So the subject is science. So two from materials that float or sink. So yeah, di ba? The motivational activity is the teacher will provide basin with water, coin, and plastic bottle. So next is from Baid. I choose science. Particular topic is force. And the activity is I play the ball and throw it in the small place. Sige, may I ask Baid and Armia to share their experience with this? Hello, ma'am and sir.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Sige, can you share this particular?
Okay, so based on my experience po, from the first topic, okay, our first topic from the book, the grade 4 science I handled, ang ginawa ko po, nag-prepare ako ng video. Kasi may mga ginagawa po akong videos na kung sino yung maka-access, doon sila manonood para at least meron po silang background knowledge. And then madali silang makakaintindi. Ang ginawa ko, nag-provide po ako ng empty basin and then with water. Nag-provide din po ako ng coin at saka ng plastic bottle or balloon po yung pinaka ginamit ko doon. Balloon. And then yun, pina-identify ko sa mga bata kung alin doon yung nagsisink at alin doon yung nagfo-float. And then why they float and why they sink. And then so far, alhamdulillah kasi nakasagot naman sila.
Okay. Sige. Very good. So, diba? That's a very good motivational activity, actually. So, diba? May mga particular objects. Sige. May I ask, sino pa dito? Sino nga yung sa materials that float or sink? Or, no, yung isa pala. Yung sa ball. Hello?
Sir.
Ay, sir. Ikaw pala yun, sir. Sige, sir. Go ahead, please, sir.
I choose science. Last, nagturo po ako ng science. Ang ginawa ko po, kasi force yung force po yung topic ko. Tapos, yung ball na yon ay ginagawa ko, nilalaro ko po, at saka atapong ko po. Tapos, ang motivation po doon ay na-encourage ko yung bata na maglaro ng bola kasi mahilig yung bata sa bola. Tapos gayahin din niya ako, for example. So, paglaro niya yun, tinatanong ko siya, ano ang involved sa ball? Bakit po gumagalaw? Bakit po nakatapon na throw mo? So, nasagot ng bata yun, sabi niya may lakas, may force. Tapos doon ko po sinabi, dahil sa force, gumagalaw yung bola, naka-throw po yung bola sa space. Yun po yung motivation ko, sir. So,
okay. Very good. That's actually a very good di ba? By teaching them about force, we let them do it first or apply yung force itself by throwing the ball. So there are actually other sharings here in our chat box. So English, the topic is English. So tell about your story. So that's the topic. To motivate them on the topic, I used to have a short storytelling that will motivate them to tell their story as well. Who got in life? So diba? That's very, this is very famous also in our students nowadays that we want, diba? They are fond of having hugot lines. Okay, very good. So another answer is science. The topic is about matter. So I use the objects that already exist in the environment that they will see and touch so that they can motivate the topic and to have their prior knowledge in the topic. So okay, very good also. So yun, telling about the story and matter, and we use of the things that are around them. From from Joshua. So I remember an activity I did in our arts class sa Basilan dati. Lectured about shapes found in nature, and I gave them 30 seconds to run outside at mamili ng mga bagay sa paligid na may shapes and let them trace it using crayons. In a way, exciting siya kasi nag-clap ako to remind them of the time. Okay, so this is also a very good motivational activity. Why? Because, di ba? Joshua asked them to run. And, di ba? Our learners, di ba? It's like, it's addressing their kinesthetic part. So, di ba? May mga learners talaga na gustong magtakbo. They want to really move in the learning session. So that's one way of addressing it. So that's part also of the motivational activity. So yeah. Okay. Sige. There are actually many sharings here. Okay. I'll just copy this everything here and I'll read it later. It's because of the interest of time. We cannot finish everything sa sharing niyo. But then again, thank you for sharing. So, okay. Sige, so please know that all your sharings here are copied on my notes list so that if ever I miss something, I can review it later. Okay? Sige, so yun. So, di ba? Those are examples of motivational activities. So, some practical tips for the experience part here. So, first, during the discussion, use a language that is understood by the learner. Okay? That's very important. Di ba? Kasi sometimes, when we want to impress our learners, hala, sige, English lang tayo dyan, without knowing that they are already confused. So, di ba? Instead of learning, we give our students confusions. And then that's very unfortunate to happen. So, again, please use a language that is understood by the learner. Second, check if the learner understands the lesson. Di ba? It's from time to time. By the way, before we proceed, so part of using a language that is understood by the learner, also in giving an activity, and motivational activity, for example, please give clear instructions first and make sure that the learner understands the what he or she will be doing. For example, yung activity ni Joshua kanina, that they will run outside to get things of different shapes. So, di ba? If the tendency is, if you just tell the students to run, sige, takbo na kayo, without checking if they have truly understood, baka mali ang magawa nila. Okay, so make sure to check first if the students have understood what to do. Okay, so di ba? Let's take another example here. Itong kay Omaira, mathematics. So again, asking the learners who has the highest allowance. So ask again how much is the expenses for riding going to school So after stating is then asked again, how much is left for his allowance? So that's the point to enter the lesson. Then after a while, you synthesize that mathematics is needed for our daily life. This since is for grade 1 learners, can't write their answers, but they can state it verbally. So, di ba? If using this example, if you do not state it clearly, you are just talking about allowance, so it might lead or it might mislead the students. So again, as I said, a practical tip is to to make sure that the student or the learner understand your activity first before implementing it. Okay, and that can be achieved if you use a language that is understood by the learner. Okay, so another example here from City. Actually po, I'm planning to have tutorial class for those pupils na nasa tabi lang ng school yung mga bahay nila. And I will not tutor them about our topic, but I will focus on reading because my school where I am assigned is still operating on the primary grade. Hence, the common problem that we encounter is poor reading performance. Kaya tuturuan ko lang po sila magbasa ng English and Filipino po. But I still have motivation for them. Like, it is important to know how to read both English and math because everything we do in our daily lives involve readings. Okay, diba? So, this motivational activity is also, diba? It attacks the affective part. Oh, tama pala, no? Important pala ito because of these particular reasons. So again, in doing this, use a language that is understood by the learner. And again, check from time to time. Please do check if the learners have understood the lesson. So now, please avoid these particular types of questions. Diba? The classic, do you understand or naintindihan mo? Please do not use this type of questioning, because it's ritualistic. And the usual answer is yes. Or so instead, you ask it this way. Which topic is easy or difficult to understand? So we have to be particular. That's why, diba, when I asked you earlier, am I still understood? And you said yes. And there's a follow-up question. Is the topic still making sense to you? Or which part of the topic do you want to be clarified about? And we can also do that in our tutorial sessions. Diba? What's good with tutorial is that, diba, it's one-on-one and you can ask many questions. You can really check if the student understands your topic. So in questioning, please do not, please as much as possible avoid, do you understand? Okay. Rather, please do it this way. Which topic is easier or difficult to understand? Okay. So in that way, you lead the students to focus on a particular topic. Okay. And kung walang response talaga, yung parang nakanganga lang ang bata, so give a follow-up question. For example, if you do it this way. So if I were to ask you on an exam, whether, for example, ano ba ito topics nyo kanina? Di ba? If I will ask you something about this particular topic about force, what will be your answer? Okay, so that's an example of questioning the students. So again, check if the learner understands the lesson. Now, di ba? In asking question, please give time. So mga 10 seconds for the students to think of an answer. Okay. Wag yung, sige, sagot agad. No, nakakatakot yun. Di ba? Ikaw, sige, kung ikaw, if you are not given time, makakasagot ka ba ng maayos? So, di ba? So, again, in asking questions, please give much time. Mga 10 or 20 seconds. But wag namang isang oras. Kasi parang equivalent na yan ng exam. Okay? Sige. So, now, take note also of or to pay attention to non-verbal responses. So, yung mga naga-frown or parang blank ang reaction ng bata, you can also start there. So, diba? So, but parang, diba? In the middle of the discussion, you asked the child, why do you look sad? Ba't parang malungkot ka? Is something bothering you about our lesson? Yung mga questions na ganyan. Okay? So, again, the idea here is to check if the learner understands the lesson. And of course, give feedback. So, di ba? Kung tama ang sagot, you say very good or you nailed it or well said. So that's an example of, di ba? If we give positive feedbacks, it's something that motivates the learner also. Okay, so yun. Give feedback. Now, if the answer of the student is wrong, please do not say, ay, mali yan. No, that's please do not do it that way. Instead of saying directly na mali, please ask questions that would lead the student to the correct answer. All right? Sige. So, yeah, diba? That's part of our teaching. So, give, or if the answer is not correct, please ask questions that would lead the learner to the correct answer. All right? Sige. Can we proceed now? Sige, so we are done with experience. Now, the next parts will be much shorter na compared to the next, the previous. So, context, experience, we are now in the reflection. So, reflection is the process by which the learner looks within in order to find meaning. Diba? In the IPP, diba? And as we do the tutorial session, we do not just end in, diba? Instilling the knowledge to the minds of the students. Rather, the learning should lead them to reflect. Okay, diba? I know that you are familiar with this. Sige. So you may ask this question again. What does this subject or topic mean to me personally? So, diba? In the part of the IPP, and as you do it in the tutorial session, please give time for the students to reflect on the particular topic. Para, again, the topic will not just remain in their heads, but also come to their hearts. Okay, so what does this topic? Now, here's the problem here sometimes. Many say that reflection is only applicable for religion or value subject. Do you agree with this?
No.
Sige, Leo says no. Why? Sige, Leo, can you share something about it? Why do you disagree?
Kahit hindi siya related sa religion or sa values.
Hello? Sige, go ahead please, Leo.
Yan lang yung ano ko.
I'm sorry, but
Narinig mo, sir?
Hindi po kasi I don't know baka sa connection. So can you please repeat that, your answer?
As human being, we are emotional being. So we tend to reflect from time to time.
Okay, very good. Yeah, tama, 'di ba? As emotional beings, we reflect from time to time, and not just during religion or values subject. So any topic, anything that we can see can be a point for us to reflect. Sige. So maybe we can try this. How will you formulate a reflection question if the topic is about parts and functions of a microscope? So this is very scientific. Sige daw, can someone try? I'll give you 2 minutes to think of a possible answer to this or a reflection question. How will you formulate?
Hello, sir.
Hello, who is speaking?
Nasser Watamama po
Hello,
speaking.
sir. Sir, sige, go ahead po, sir.
For this question po, how will you formulate reflection question if the topic is about parts and function of microscope? And this topic is related to science siguro. And for me to formulate the reflection of this topic is, I think siguro most of the time kasi nagagamit natin tong microscope, especially tayo na napagdaanan natin. Some of the students are not yet already use yung microscope. But then yung magiging reflection lang siguro natin dito, if hindi available yung na to, yung itong gamit na to, so we can provide a video or pwede pa natin sila papanoorin ng video about microscope and kung ano yung makikita nila doon. So pwede tayong mag-create or mag-formulate ng questions, reflection about kung ano yung mga nakita nila doon sa microscope. Ano ba yung mga glass doon, yung mga nakita nila, yung mga ano yung parts o ano yung mga function ng microscope na yon. So kasi itong microscope kasi medyo mahirap sa amin na lugar within the rural area. Parang hindi po nagagamit ng mga bata kasi wala pong available na ganito. But then, yun yung pinaka-the best way. Kung hindi po actual, for the reflection is kung lang po, mga videos lang or something pictures na makikita nila, then pwede po sila magkaroon ng reflection regarding on that way.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Nasa, diba? That's actually being resourceful. If the microscope is not there, so show them videos on how the parts and functions. Sige. So, diba? This is a very scientific topic, but how do we lead the students to reflect on this? For example, so I have here a reflection question that would help you, perhaps, or the students reflect. Diba? Sige. The reflection question can be stated this way. So, if microscope makes us see objects that are too small for the naked eye, can you imagine fighting COVID-19 without a microscope? Diba? It's a question that would lead the students to reflect. Tama, no? If the virus is not seen by the naked eye, how else can we discover the vaccine? This is one of the examples. Diba? This question would lead the students to reflect. Tama, no? If the microscope was not invented, how could we possibly, how can we survive? How can I survive? How can I go back to the old normal? Diba? This is coming from the topic of microscope, but then we make a question that would lead them to reflect. Diba? Does this make sense to you also? Diba? So this is to prove that reflection is not just for religion and values. It can be anywhere else, including the microscope. So again, our task then is to make sure to formulate reflection questions that would lead the students to reflect or to look within themselves, to look around and see the relevance of the topic to our day-to-day living. Okay, is it clear so far, or is there something that confuses you?
Clear, sir. Clear po.
Okay, sige, thank you. So again, reflection is not just for religion or values. Anything under the sun can be a source of, or can be a point for our reflection. Okay? Sige. So that's for the reflection. Now we are down to two remaining: action. So for Ignatius, love ought to manifest itself in deeds rather than in words. So for the action part, diba? We, after learning and after reflecting, it should lead our students to action. So, diba? Actions can be in a form of activity. So yung mga ipasusulat natin sa mga bata, but also it's important to ask this question: how do I encourage and provide opportunities for my students to take action consistent resulting from their newly discerned perspective? So, for example, here in the Ateneo, we, diba, the topic is about poverty, for example. Now, one of the ways to address poverty or the scarcity of food is to create our own food. And so part of the actions of the students that we ask here is to for them to experience actual gardening. Okay, so how about you in your places there? How do you make sure that the students take action, that from their learned concepts, they will translate them into practical actions? Okay, so, diba? Actions can be in the form of an exam to check if they have understood it, or in the form of a synthesis, but also the actual action is that they apply what they have learned in their actual lives. Okay, so again, the question that the educator must ask: how do I encourage and provide opportunities for my students to take action consistent resulting from their newly discerned perspectives? Action. That's for action. Again, the learning must not remain in the head, but must be translated into practical actions. Next, we are done with reflection and action. And finally, we are here in the evaluation part. So the last part of our webinar this morning. So the evaluation includes the periodic evaluation of each individual student's growth in attitudes, priorities, and actions consistent with being a person for others. Okay, so diba? We evaluate. Now, we ask these questions: how have my students' attitudes, awareness of or sensitivity toward the subject area shifted, changed, or grown? Second, how might I assess how my students have grown intellectually, humanly, socially, spiritually, and morally? Diba? Again, the evaluation can be in a form of exam to check if the concepts are learned well. So if we understand evaluation that way, that's what we call as immediate evaluation. So, diba? The evaluation that we get right after we deliver the lesson. So there's also another type of evaluation, and that is remote. So, diba? Kung sa immediate evaluation, we get the students learn concept through an exam. Sa remote, it would take time. It would take months. It would take years even. Okay. So for example, my example of this remote evaluation, I know that my student have understood our lesson because one time my student in the previous year shared with me, sir, diba? It was somehow in a form of joke. Kasi nga, di ba? Sir, thanks to our topic on she said, sir, thank you for our topic on proper waste management because now ang bulsa ko palaging puno na ng basura. So she said it that way. But then, di ba? If I looking at it closely, and I said, bakit? Kasi po sa mga public areas walang segregation bins. So the trashes are not segregated. So what I do is I just put it in my pocket, and then later when I enter the school or when I go home, I would throw it in the proper place. So that's an example of remote evaluation. And again, this does not happen overnight or right after our lesson. It happens months or years later. One of my students also shared with me that our lesson also about proper waste management, for example, has affected her because one time she went to 7-Eleven daw. Tapos doon, walang segregation bins. And so she asked really the workers there, sir, bakit walang segregation bins dito? So, di ba? You see the effect of our learnings of our lessons to our students, and we evaluate them first immediate through an exam, but second is through a remote evaluation. Okay, so again, so that's it. To summarize, so context, we understand the background of our learner. Experience, we let them experience the actual teaching, and of course the lessons should lead them to reflect on a particular topic, and of course the learned concepts and must lead them to action, and of course evaluation. Sige, it's already 10, but I can entertain 1 or 2 questions pa if you have with regard to our topic this morning. Is it okay to extend lang mga 5 minutes? Okay,
Sure, sir, sure.
sige.
Yes.
Thank you. Sige.
Hindi pong top.
Sige. Do you have questions? What's
Sir, so far you deliver very well, so we don't have any questions for me lang.
Okay, thank you, Nasser. Thank you, sir. Who else?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, excuse me. Dito po sa last na topic natin, okay po dito. Pero doon sa previous, may question ako po doon. Doon sa sabi, we need to understand, we need to know the student or learners. So, doon po sa families, paano kung yung families ay hindi pwede ipaalam? Parang mahihiya yung bata na alamin ng teacher yung background ng pamilya niya. So, ano yung mga step na gagawin ng teacher? Aalamin pa ba or hayaan na hindi na aalamin yung backgrounds ng family? For example, ganun po yun, sir. Yun po yung tanong ko.
Okay, sige. So, yeah, that's a very good question actually. First and foremost is we respect privacy. So if they don't want us to learn about their family, it's okay, it's fine, okay? But, di ba? Yeah, of course, we have to respect their privacy. But, yeah, I said that because, yung family, because it would tell us so much about the learner. And, di ba? But from that particular situation, di ba, if the learner doesn't want her or herself or his family be known to the teacher, then there is something about the family, and that would lead us to, di ba, to know more about our student. Maybe because mahiyain tong bata to. So, di ba, later in our as we progress with the lessons, diba, if we are wondering, bakit parang ang tahimik ng batang ito? Kasi nga, going back to that particular situation, even the background of the family, he or she doesn't want to share it. So, in other words, by that situation, we learn that the student or the learner, ano ba, mahiyain, ano ba, he or she doesn't want to share, parang ganon. So, again, first is respect the privacy, but then it can also be a point where we can learn from them all the more. Okay. Did I answer your question, sir? Sige. Anyone else? Sige. So kung wala ng questions, I would like to end my sharing this morning with this very important note here. Please pay attention to teachable moments. What do we mean by teachable moments? So it could be something that's not included in the learning plan, but you find it relevant to share it with your students. Now, the teachable moments can happen anytime. So for example, sa context pa lang, sa experience pa lang. So if we have these teachable moments that we teach them about life, we teach them about the importance of these things, please grab it. Okay? For example, in my lesson last Monday, I shared a particular story, an inspirational story to my students. Now, as I shared this, kasi the main lesson of the story is from rags to riches. Parang galing sa mahirap, because of hard work, their way of living, or the person's way of living, improved. And then to my surprise, the students also shared their stories of rags to riches. So instead of continuing the topic, I grabbed that teachable moment to highlight what they shared. Okay, diba? That's an example of teachable moment. It can happen anytime in the tutorial or in the teaching session. So if you find something that's worthy of emphasis because it's important, please grab it. And if there's a need to stop with the learning plan or the lesson plan that you have learned, please do so. And that's fine. That's okay. Okay? Sige. So, yun. Kasi these teachable moments, most of the time, are what remain to our students even after the topic. So sometimes they forget the main topic, but these teachable moments will be brought by them as they continue with their lives. All right. Sige. So I think that's the end of my sharing. Thank you for listening and thank you for your participation. I hope you learned something from me. Kahit konti lang, okay na sa akin yun. Okay? Sige. So, what do we do next? Josh?
So thank you so much, Kuya Edwin. Kuya Junjun pala ang nickname ni Kuya Edwin Pedad. So salamat masyado Kuya Jun sa very formative and informative na talk na binigay mo. So rest assured, magagamit talaga to ng ating mga volunteers, most especially na many of them would really engage to one-on-one tutorial sa mga bata given our situation sa pandemic. And hearing their stories, when I visited Cotabato, Sultan Kudarat, and Maguindanao, there are many challenges in the part of our volunteers on how to deliver their lessons kasi many of them are not yet familiar with the new normal way of teaching. Especially ang ganitong setting na aside sa bago ang setting, but the circumstances sa kanila mismo mga area, mahina ang signal, meron pa mga financial problem on the part of the school and the students themselves, medyo mahirap talaga, no? So our volunteers would really have to improvise on their teaching. So many of them pumupunta pa sa bukid para mag-deliver ng modules, and I also encountered some volunteers na sila pa mismo ang nag-aaya or nag-invite sa mga parents, no, just to have their kids go to school, no, mga ganyan na situation or mga experiences ng ating mga volunteers. So in a way, very thankful kami sa iyong talk, and for our volunteers, no, I know they could use it not only for this year because we are projecting na by next year, most probably ganito pa rin yung setting natin. So magagamit to siya. And then rest assured na ma-share ang iyong mga input, Kuya Juno, kasi ang mga volunteers natin, they also have the initiative to share it to the teachers. Kasi they also care for their teachers, no, sa mga ganito na bagay. So no one's left behind talaga sa kanilang teaching experience sa school. So yun, thank you so much. And then konting update. So we are done doing monitoring visits doon sa mga dimension ko ng mga lugar. So ang next namin i-visit most probably by next week, kasi nasa 7-day quarantine pa kami, would be the island provinces of Basilan and Tawi-Tawi. So far, yun lang naman. So kung meron kayong questions, you can reach me naman so I can tell Kuya Junjun din kung meron pang mga questions regarding the presentation. And also he said na magbibigay din siya ng copy ng kanyang presentation, so magagamit din niya yun. So isasali namin yung sa kit na ibibigay namin once we would visit your area soon. So yun lang. So thank you so much. And then Kuya Jun, although may klase ka pa sa masters and then may mga responsibilities ka pa sa ADO, but still you made time for our volunteers, no? So very thankful kami sa opportunity to have you in our sessions, sa pagiging part ng MVP through this MVP tutorial session. So thank you so much and God bless. So any final words, Kuya?
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm also fortunate to hear from your stories. So actually, well, diba, the goal is that first is to help you, but in a way, I realized that you also help me know more about your context, know more about the situation here in our country. So once again, thank you for being here. It's an honor to be with you, and please rest assured that you are included in my prayers. Okay, please do pray for me also. Thank you. Sige.
Thank you. So wala na ba kayo mga questions?
Thank you, sir.
No more, sir.
Okay, so
Thank you,
let's end
sir.
this session with
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sir Joshua. Thank you sa lahat.
Sige.
Thank
So
you, Josh.
let us end this session with the prayers. I would lead the prayer na lang din para matapos na tayo. So let us be aware of the presence of God and Allah. So let us pray. Almighty God, we are thankful for this wonderful opportunity, for a chance to meet together in these sessions. Lord God, help us and guide us in our teaching ministry, in our teaching advocacy, and most of all, help us to remember that whatever we do not do it for our own self-glorification, but for the great glory of your name. Amen. Amen. So thank you. You can leave now sa So gi-record ko itong natin session. So meron kayong babalik-balikan once may gusto kayong i-clarify. Thank you.
Opo, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you din, sir. Bye-bye. Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Bye.
Thank you sa lahat.
Thank you, Sir Edwin.